And so we're going to start now. So why don't you introduce yourself and just start.
Well, I want to report that I was able to get my luggage.
Oh, yes!
I received an email at midnight saying the luggage at Vilnius airport. Where would you like us to bring it? They said, leave it there.
Please do nothing with it.
And then which they promptly put it on a flight to Paris.
You said it, Russell, so now it might be on the flight.
Anyway, I have a lot of materials here, and sometimes it's actually good to be the last. And I think that I learned a lot just listening to everyone. And I want to thank the committee for inviting me, Yolanda particularly, who insisted and was great to make things happen. It's always to be visiting Lithuania. This is not my first time. My only handicap that I don't speak the Lithuanian language. Maybe I should stick around here for a longer time. It's always wonderful to be in the company of Algis Mickūnas. And I thought a lot about what to do for this wonderful occasion. And to honor Algis' 80th birthday, I thought I would like to connect Algis with wonderful phenomenon that I am actually in love with. The first one is the phenomenon of beauty. The second is the phenomenon of transparency. And the third is the phenomenon of what I call the absolute or lack of the absolute, which I will explain that as we go further. So let me start with, by the way, everyone a challenge, I'll just ask him how you drink all that and not being drunk. My question to him, I have never seen Algis eating. Have you seen Algis eating? I watch you all the time, you don't eat. I don't know how you survive.
You have to get up real early.
Okay. So let me start first with the connection to the phenomenon of beauty. Hopefully everything is working here. It was in June 2009 where I had the pleasure and the honor to participate in a conference that actually was the theme of the phenomenon of beauty, and it is Horizon. And it was supported or sponsored by the Lithuanian Institute of Literature and Folklore. And I think Ruta was, she's not here, was the only person who actually connected me with that. The topic or the theme that I presented at the time was the pathless journey of beauty, experiencing the sublime through enchantment of eros. This was a significant occasion for me, and it was the first time I had the pleasure to meet Algis. I know about him, but I never met him before 2009, so I envy all of you who study under this wonderful human being. So I'm really getting Algis in a whole different way. I'm jealous of all of you. Prior to this meeting Algis, I had known a lot about his work through translating Jean Gibson's The Ever-Present Origin, which I think is one of the most wonderful books that I've ever read. I recall that after the conference, Algis invited people to his apartment in Vilnius to continue the conversation on beauty and love, and was really fascinating because I could see how Algis connect with others, colleagues, students, and friends, and I can see the mutual love and affection for people and for him. So this gathering was very appropriate for a conference was talking about love and beauty, and you recall that too. There was, and I'm going to expand on the idea of the phenomenon of beauty, and I'm hoping that I can finish everything that I have here, and John, be kind to me. I threaten him if he would not give me a chance. There has been numerous writing on the paradoxical phenomenon of love and beauty. Paradoxical because what loves want does not have. In a sense, love always seeks what it lacks. Eros loves beautiful things because it lacks beautiful. So the paradoxical nature of beauty suggests that the beautiful and the grotesque are really interconnected. I used to think that ugly things or grotesque are not moving, but in fact I was wrong. For example, you're familiar with Guernica by Picasso. Many people will say that's grotesque, but it's so beautiful. You can have tears looking at this painting. Same thing with Salvador Dali, hallucinogenic Redor. It's incredible the juxtaposition between the beauty of Venus and the killing of the bull. It's the paradox between killing and loving. It's a paradox of beauty. So artists really have done a good job in making this connection for us. But let me a little bit talk more about the phenomena that we call eros. I used to think that eros is basically the erotic phenomenon, but really eros for me is the trigger of all kind of love, all kind of love. So manifested in eros, love is the highest degree of awareness of self. As human being, it is the highest degree of integration with others. So, and I'm not going to read what's being projected on the board, we can just use this as a background. Eros, which I call the generator of desire. And if we take the phrase generator of desire, translate into G-O-D, which is God. For me, Eros, generator of desire, is God. This is not new to us because we have seen that in Jewish traditional and Christian tradition. So the generator of desire, God, G-O-D, seduces us to desperately and passionately seek our original wholeness out of our present incompleteness. By implication, this form of seduction makes eros a periodic phenomenon. Number one, it goes from the bottom to the right, going up. Our present ontological incompleteness, if we cannot accept that, we cannot go far. Two, our recognition of our incompleteness. And three, our desire to overcome our incompleteness. Any form of love, whatever you think of, it is a way to connect with much larger whole. And we are destined to do that. We never stop. We never stop connecting with a much larger whole. But the sporadic manifestation of eros has a remarkable features of reciprocity and infinity. This means that whole is never complete. And very devastating thing when you open the English dictionary and you try to find out what whole is in the English dictionary. One of the description or definition of whole is complete. That is wrong. Whole is never complete. Only whole, when it is complete, is a dead whole, not a live whole. Whole is always part of a larger whole, and it goes infinite. So this whole idea about the reality relationship that I showed is predetermined. It is actually prerequisite for our creation, and I use the word design because design for me is synonymous with creation. You create, you design. And I'm not talking about physical things, I'm talking design with what we call capital D. So this two-way street, in order for me or any one of us to actually engage in homophilia, the love of homies, that's the word that I made up and I was embarrassed that I did that a few years ago, not anymore, when like I'm just showing us when you get old, we don't care anymore what you say and what people think. Thank you, I just...
Thank you for that compliment.
So it is a two-way street because if we create, we have to embody that sense of wholeness or quality of wholeness, which I call holophilia, for the lack of a better term, the love of wholeness. But it doesn't stop at that. It is actually the manifestation of what we do with each other or for the world. It is a manifestation that I also call holophilia. So it's a two-way street. Gibson said a lot of things that I mentioned earlier, which I am again thankful for Algis to translate this marvelous book. Without it, I would never really connect with Algis. I think he wrote the book in German language, and my German is not good, equal to the Lithuanian. Gibson would say, and I'm paraphrasing, nothing exists in life autonomously for its own sake. It exists for the sake of the whole, he says. I would like to add that it also exists to persistently seek to be in a larger whole. It seems that the ultimate purpose of life is to seek wholeness and to be nested, applied, belong to a larger whole. So this whole idea about homophilia, it is actually that allows us to be involved in creating a microcosmic whole and to be involved into macrocosmic whole. It is an endless process. Semiotician would call this semiosis, or infinite process. Well, I'm referring to Peirce's semiotics here. The experience of beauty is the seductive journey that leads us toward an open-ended process of wholeness. But ironically, this journey is pathless. You cannot have a map or agenda to go and explore beauty and wholeness. Experiencing beauty does not need a roadmap. It is a continuous navigation through ambiguous flow of life. And because this pathless journey is characterized by uncertainty and ambiguity, it requires perseverance, and I want you to keep the word perseverance in mind because this is really a very important piece in the work that I do. It requires perseverance in dealing with paradoxical nature of beauty, and rightfully so with all paradoxes. Only by allowing Eros, the generator of desire, God, to cast his or her spell on our hearts and mind can we experience the sublime. So beauty lies neither in the denial of sensuous pleasure along the way, nor in the evolution of our modes of perceiving it. Beauty is an intentional act of what James Hillman, a psychologist, American psychologist, so actually called it, use the word soul as a verb, to ensoul the world, to give life to the world. And I love that term a lot. The ultimate purpose of beauty then is not mere indulgence of sensuous pleasure, but the active engagement with love that animates things in the world. We give life to things in the world. We ensoul things in the world. The work of love transcends aesthetic sensuality into the diaphanous perception, transparent perception. And this brings me to the second paradox that I would like to talk about. And again, thanks to Algis for connecting me with the work of Gibson. I mentioned Gibson earlier and the ever-present origin. Without this remarkable translation, I would never know anything about diaphanous perception. A key idea of this book, The Ever-Present Origin, certainly about diaphanous perception or transparent perception. This is significant because transparency is the hallmark of an age that we have been calling transmodernity, which, by the way, is more inclusive of modernity and postmodernity, and resonate with Gibson's notion of a respectable world. See, we don't live in postmodern world. People are still talking about postmodern. We are not in postmodern. We are in transmodern world. So we are moving from modernity to postmodernity, and now I believe we are in transmodernity. The notion of transmodernity was first introduced by the Latin American philosopher Henri Dussel in his work, Philosophy of Liberation. Dussel coins the idea of transmodernity as a project for transcending modernity and postmodernity, and as a call for social change, for de-alienation, de-marginalization, and decolonization of the world. Very interesting thing about the term transmodernity, particularly the prefix trans. The prefix trans in the term of transmodernity catches our attention. It means literally beyond and through. This means to be, this is actually the rationale behind Dussel favoring the word beyond over the word post. He could have called it postmodernism, but he chose not to do that. Both Dussel, transmodernity, and Gibson's A Respectable World share the same quality, as I said, of transparency, or to use Gibson's term, diaphanous perception, making the connection between the age of transmodernity and a respectable world quite significant. This transparency in transmodernity can be attained by only integration, but that's a very interesting point here. Integration does not mean mixing, like we used to say that in the state, the melting pot, which got us into a lot of trouble. We are not melting pot. When you mix things, you don't have difference, you don't have mosaics of richness of cultures, sameness, liveliness. That's not the integration that we're talking about. But listen to this. But integration does not imply mixing and resolving differences. Rather, integration reveals the transparency between differences. You see the paradox here? Take, for example, the process of homogenization of culture and marginalization of ethnic community, which has been common characteristic of contemporary society. It's seen in the pursuit of what we call global culture. There has been a strong tendency to diffuse the whole notion of culture itself. But this is paradoxical. Let me explain. On one hand, influenced by digital technology, we talked about technology earlier, and mass communication, contemporary societies experience cultural dilution and in which sameness and indifferences have grown at a disturbing rate. This indifferent posture to the difference of others, which relinquish both one's own otherness and the otherness of others. Undoubtedly, this led to the mutual exclusion of self and others and a reduced sense of individuality. I'm actually looking at the self and others in a also metaphorical level. So I'm talking about specific culture and other culture. You see, self as individual, the collective, culture as unique and individual culture and other cultures. You see, while a person may feel the pressure of social relationships that may prevent him or her from experiencing any individuality, excessive individualization and self-centered attitude hamper all communication, making people feel more easily alienated. See the forces that operates here. As long as our thinking is exclusively self-centered, the world remains and continue to be mere fragmentation of cultures and individuals, struggling for self-preservation and fighting each other for recognition and domination. Consequently, these cultural practices have sharpened the contradiction between self and others, leading to twisted radical nationalism. We have witnessed that through history. On the other hand, the scholars who are optimistic about the advantage of digital age and technology argue that contemporary society has an unprecedented opportunity, unmatched opportunity, for promising a healthy cultural human community. How is this? This is actually a valid argument. Cultures of time past were viewed as autonomous entities, often with narrow-minded ethnic attitudes. In transmodern world, and due to the space-time compression, many different cultures, practices, and objects are experienced within a particular culture and even in its own soil. The United States is a good example of that. So many subcultures. And this makes nationalism less pronounced, but simultaneously intensifying the need and the struggle for cultural identity. In a transmodern world, no longer can culture be perceived as divorced from other cultures. The long-held assumption that culture are basically associated with respective countries require a critical examination. Since culture is basically a set of practice that is socially constructed, wherein its members define themselves and make meaning out of their experience and action, the idea of culture extends across a large spectrum of different ethnic groups and professional organizations, even within a particular nation. The thing that comes to mind as Coptic Christian, I don't necessarily practice as Christian, growing up in Egypt or born in Egypt. People sustain their culture, but by actually acknowledging other cultures, particularly the Islamic culture, and it was a challenge. Some of us had to leave the country to move, which I'm delighted I did. Paradoxically, the inner connection between two seemingly contradictory opposites, forces, provides a beautiful juxtaposition of differences. This is really phenomenal, as we're all aware of. If you look at the color wheel, the color that diametrically opposed to other colors are the most harmonious ones. You remember that? Yeah, Christmas time, green, red, yellow and blue, etc., etc. So the differences are not necessarily bad or make us fear. The difference actually highlights the beauty and the quality with what we're receiving. The beautiful juxtaposition can be achieved through our capacity to reframe and radically recontextualize our experience. This is also another point that's very important, will be coming in the conclusion. And this juxtaposition in turn can generate unlimited beautiful alternative for not only maintaining cultural identity, but also for transforming culture itself. You see, it's not just maintain the identity, but to take it further. Because if it stayed without change, the stagnation destined to decay. We experience the paradox of what Jean Baudrillard called exponential instability and exponential stability. That is a time with no end, but only a cycle of paradoxical encounters. The intersection of instability and stability, is the never-ending paradoxical phenomenon of life. It goes again to the triadic relation, which I'm influenced by Peirce's work. He always look at things as triadic relation, like the one I mentioned to a different tangent here, but he's talking about sign as being representative, we call it or sign, object, and mind, or interpretant. So, in any social paradox, there are three elements that I would define them as: one, an awareness of the presence of contradictory forces, not having the fear of contradictory forces. I'll do my best. Two, an acknowledgement that these forces are natural and invariably rooted in individual and culture. And three, assertion that these contradictory forces are linked together and derive from a common source that contradict and contradict the way people perceive the world. I have so much here that I will try to run fast. Our ability and skills to persevere through the paradox can be developed through experiencing cross-cultural interaction, not only cross international boundaries, but also within national boundaries. Culture can maintain their identity in the face of globalizing world. Contemporary society can persevere through paradoxical phenomenon of transparency by requiring the capacity to transform the notion of the absolute, and this will bring me to the third paradox, which I call the paradoxical phenomenon of the absolute. The claim of the existence of the absolute God. Now I'm really working with the notion of absolute and God, because there is a lot of work that's been done in literature about that, and I want to save time for other things here. The claim for the existence of the absolute God in the religious tradition has gone beyond mere existence into absolutism, exemplifying in the notion of true God, where the rest of human beings are egoism. For example, the Islamic slogan, "There is only no God but Allah," you talked about that, has created a dogmatic stance, as well as the Christian interpretation of Jesus' declaration, "I am the way, the truth, and the life," has by association rendered Christianity a religion superior over all others. But from ancient Egyptian civilization to the present time, God has been objectified in numerous forms and has been recognized by many different names. For instance, the esoteric religions of Buddhism and Hinduism have no one creator God, and the absolute God has no place. And this spiritual tradition of Kalahari Bushmen in Africa, God may be given a different name as often as every day. In this sense, the absolute is a fluid dynamics. We can absorb the metamorphosis of the absolute. We can absorb the metamorphosis of the absolute and how our sense of God has changed over time. The absolute has been transformed from mythological gods and goddesses in ancient Egypt and classical Greek into the mighty Yahweh in the Old Testament, and to Christ in the New Testament, and to Allah of Islam, and into technology that seems to possess the power that influences all our aspects of life. Ironically, while technology is being elevated to the status of the God of our time, we human beings, tend to forget that technology is our own creation. We have forgotten that we created that God. There is a wonderful quotation here, and you can read that from Mark Taylor, which has a book. It's saying that God is not a phenomenon that actually you can hold on localize. Clearly, there is a philosophical problem with the conventional understanding of the nature of absolute and the meaning of God. On the one hand, if the absolute is the only worship God, it denies human capacity to create and to transform, and therefore paralyzes them from performing the very nature of God's image, not the look, the image that is the act of creation. On the other hand, if this entity exists for its own glory, indulging itself by human worship and idealization, then it is self-absorbed, self-indulgent, and codependent on human being for its existence. The notion of God, this notion of God, puts human at crossroads of conduct, whether to obey the mighty God and his representative in all good conduct, or consequently be thrown into hell. God does not seek self-fulfillment. Instead, the relation between human and God is a relationship that constitutes a desire for seeking mutual fulfillment through metamorphosis, through process of crisis. God is near and remote, one and many, personal and personal, and as Arthur Whitehead says, quote, God is be conceived as one and as many in the converse sense in which the world is to be conceived as many as one. End of quote.
Time is over.
We humans have forgotten. God created us, but we also created God. And for the sake of time here, because I've been told to shut up, Farouk. I really like to jump into the conclusion here, and I'm going to ask your forgiveness to take another 3 or 4 minutes. Okay?
You just can't ask God's forgiveness, right?
So let me just go to the conclusion here, which I'm not proposing a solution, I'm proposing something that I struggle with, how we experience reality in transmodern world. And basically what I'm saying that to experience that reality, we have to actually be able to navigate through diaphanous perception through I'm making a point here, but I'm not going to read all this. The point that reality is really an illusion, and what is real is not always true. If what's real is always true, Christopher Columbus would have fallen over the edge of the earth. And then the last thing that I want to say, if paradoxes are something that we cannot resolve and solve because they are not problems, we have to live with them through perseverance. And perseverance basically navigating through what I call diaphanous space and polychronic time. And finally, I would say that the whole thing about transmodernity is moving from the integration of present and future into integration past and present, and now living in a transmodernity, transmodern world with the integration of the past, present, and future into what we call hyper-reality. And I want to conclude here by saying, we are grateful to you. You have opened many doors for all of us to appreciate, and more significantly, to persevere through the paradoxical phenomenon of life. Thank you.